Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I'm a marketing specialist here at Educate 360. Welcome to today's webinar, Microsoft Security, Compliance, and Identity, presented by our fantastic technical instructor for today, Ken Crawshaw. We are in Zoom for today's session, and we will be sharing a copy of this recording with you in an email after the webinar. We do encourage participation throughout the webinar, so please use the chat or the Q&A option for our short Q&A portion after the presentation. Educate 360 is so excited to present this webinar today. And without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Ken.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. My name is Ken Crawshaw, Coleslaw, Crenshaw, Crayfish, Crawdad. Got a lot of variations on my name. During the presentation, if you have questions, you can address me just as Ken. I'm very informal. I'm a senior principal technical instructor for New Horizons. I've been with New Horizons since September 2001. Started off my IT career back in 1990 after I graduated from Butler University. Started my career with Bank One Mortgage, Bank with a C, Mortgage Corporation. You can't spell it with a K if you don't accept deposits. So worked for Bank One Mortgage on the help desk, worked on the first mortgage loan application app, and so helped design that. And after my time with Bank One Mortgage was done, I started working for a company called Omnicell. Those of you that may be part of the medical industry might recognize the name Omnicell. They do hospital inventory control. Think of a big vending machine where you would put items that you would use on patients. And so the staff would select the item, it would get billed to the patient, and it would send a message over to material management to let them know what needed to be restocked. So it automated a lot of processes, and it also made sure that items were being billed to patients rather than having a general hospital expense. After my time with Omnicell was over, I went back into the mortgage industry, DMR Financial, out of Michigan, and I oversaw Indianapolis, Indiana, where I'm currently located out of, Fremont, California, and Phoenix, Arizona. And so with these three experiences, financial, medical, financial, obviously we're dealing with a lot of regulatory compliance. And so we worry about the security of our assets. And so that kind of brings us into today's presentation, talking about Microsoft security, compliance, and identity. We are putting a huge amount of emphasis in today's world into cybersecurity. And there are a lot of different solutions that are out there in order to make sure that we are complying with, if you're government agency, you've got FISMA. If you're medical, you've got HIPAA. Financial information with Graham Leach Bliley. If you're a publicly traded company with $75 million in assets, Sarbanes-Oxley. If you keep credit card information, PCI DSS. You've got the alphabet soup of all of the different things that you have to worry about, let alone making sure that your assets are protected properly in regards to things like the confidentiality. We talk about the integrity and the availability. So in today's world, we've seen a huge shift in how we do business. We're no longer looking at the brick and mortar, the being bound by just the confines, the walls of our building. We're seeing a lot of distributed employees. We see employees working anywhere and everywhere. We are looking at trying to reduce our carbon footprint even within our own buildings, and not necessarily hosting our own resources, but we're going outside. We're using a wide variety of different sources in order to host our resources. And Microsoft Cloud and Microsoft is offering a lot of different solutions to us in regards to our functions. When you think about Microsoft 365 and you get into the use of Exchange and Outlook and being able to use your file sharing locations, utilizing a GitHub, moving your domain and your domain controller to the cloud. So to accommodate the remote users using tools like Azure. You've got Intune, which is the domain, you've got Azure, the domain controller, and being able to provide different functions, applications, solutions to your problems using Microsoft Dynamics 365, using the Microsoft Power Platform to develop solutions to your problems that can incorporate things like your artificial intelligence. And remember, artificial intelligence is not just looking at the creation of content like Elvis singing "I'm a Little Teapot," but artificial intelligence being able to analyze, be able to recognize the number of packets, the type of packets, be able to look for anomalies in regards to how services are being utilized. And so there's a lot of opportunity to host a lot of different resources in the cloud, but we're now seeing new risks associated with allowing someone else to host our services. We worry about that shared responsibility. There's security of the cloud, the security that the cloud provider provides in regards to the physical assets, the virtualization, and then all of a sudden the shared responsibility of security in the cloud, the resources that we're using. And it's important for us to be able to uniquely identify who is trying to gain access to the resources, make sure that they only have access to the resources they need with the level of access they need while still maintaining regulatory compliance, understanding how certain assets need to be protected. And so, like we said, the nature of business and work has changed dramatically. The impossible has become the possible. We saw, unfortunately, with the pandemic, people not being able to be in the physical building with us, but working from home. And with this shift in the work environment, we have a whole new set of risks that we have to deal with. And unfortunately, conventional security tools have not always kept pace. Now, when we think about conventional security, we think about the idea of the castle and the moat. We wind up putting our single barrier, and hey, you know what? People working inside the building, great. They're allowed to gain access. We've got the moat to keep people from the outside world from coming in. The only problem is we now have people working remote, and that is the norm, not the exception. And with our global economy, it becomes even more of a challenge, making sure that we are doing things in a secure way. At the beginning of the pandemic, we got things to work, but were we actually getting things to work securely? That's the question. And so our decisions, a lot of times, were based on getting things to work. And unfortunately, organizations that haven't gone back through and do a new risk assessment of how we are doing business, they're getting caught off guard. The cost of breaches and being able to keep up with regulations, the collateral damage is becoming astronomical when you really think about the cost of a breach. I mean, think about if you have 100,000 records that get compromised, and out of courtesy, you do 2 credit bureau checks a year for 5 years at $25 a pop. That's $25 million in collateral damage just in the credit bureau reports. And that doesn't have anything to do with the cost of the breach within regulatory compliance. Back in the day when I was looking at the hospital environment, a single breach would cost just $1.5 million in fines if it was shown that you didn't show your due diligence and you didn't show your due care. Not being compliant has its own cost. So cybersecurity, like we said, is not really optional anymore. What's interesting with some of the figures that we have out here, and The slideshow will be shared later on. In the notes, there are links for the statistics that we see out here. So if you are interested in reading a little bit more, there is some information in there within the notes from the slideshow. But is it really 64% of companies worldwide have experienced at least one form of cyber attack? I would contend it's probably a whole lot more. A lot of organizations don't understand their risks. They don't understand the business processes. They don't understand what are the most likely ways that they're going to be compromised, and they're not monitoring for the right things. And so they're getting these false negatives where they assume that, hey, everything's hunky-dory, everything's great, but they don't even understand the indicators. So the 64% number, in my opinion, may be low based on people just not understanding what to look for. A lot of different attacks include some form of social engineering. And one of the easiest ways to social engineer folks is through the idea of email. And so being able to go ahead and trick people into clicking on links, going out to fake versions of websites, being able to go back through and collect credentials. Now, I did see a hand go up. We'll answer questions at the end of the session as well. So I apologize for not, calling on people that are raising their hands. So I do apologize for that. When we think about what we do, how we do, things as an organization, IT is not going away anytime soon. We're seeing through, different initiatives, digital job growth being projected to increase by, they talk about 149 million net new jobs between, 2020 and 2025. So we're getting towards the end of that, span. And when we think about all the collateral damage associated with cyber crimes, projecting, talking about going up to, they talk about $10.5 trillion annually as far as the cost associated with cybercrime. And as an organization, can you really put a price on your reputation? Now, as far as cybersecurity skills go, proper training, proper use of tools. The cybersecurity job reports, 3.5 million openings, potentially in 2025. And we're just starting to see an emphasis from a lot of organizations in regards to needing better skills, better trained employees. Before when we thought about the IT department, it was kind of an added bonus if organizations sent people for training to be able to update their skills. Now it's almost a requirement that, and there is no actual requirement, but a lot of companies are viewing it as an important aspect of the job to send employees to improve their skill sets to be able to respond to all of the threats that we're now starting to see based on the shift in business. Pearson VUE has done a couple different surveys. Different organizations have done surveys, but they talk about the value of certification. 61% of tech professionals say that earning a certification garnered them a promotion. Your level of education, your ability to show knowledge is important, and that could very easily lead to a salary increase. Remember, when you can demonstrate knowledge, when you have the ability to talk through, to be able to communicate, to be able to go back through and provide solutions to problems, there's a level of trust that you garner from your peers, even from upper management as well, And so they said 74% of IT professionals claim certification gave them greater work autonomy and independence. There are going to be those people that try to micromanage, but with certifications and demonstrating knowledge, um, allowing someone to do their job without the micromanagement, that goes a long way within a work environment. That also leads to, for me, being a happier employee. As far as Microsoft's tools that they have, there's a wide variety of different tools that they offer. We saw in the previous slide as far as some of the different resources that are out there. There's a lot of specific training on how to implement identity, implement security and work with compliance. SC900 is a little bit different class. It is a fundamental class. When we talk about the fundamentals, we're getting into an understanding of the idea. Fundamental, master of the basics. Being able to describe is, the term describe is a great way of looking at what this particular class does. Helps describe security, compliance, and identity fundamentals, and how some of the different offerings, the services, the applications for Microsoft can provide the level of protection that you are needing. Half the battle is knowing what tools you should use in order to provide a secure environment. And so a class like the SC900 isn't necessarily targeted only towards the Security Operations Center. It's not targeted towards the enterprise admin. This is a good solution for those people that do have a lot of IT experience and those that are getting their feet wet, learning about general concepts of security, compliance, and identity, understanding the capabilities of the Microsoft Identity and Access Management solutions, being able to look at some of the different products and understand the use of specific products, not necessarily, initially configuring. So the fundamental class, they talk about being able to describe the concept of security, compliance, and identity, being able to describe the capabilities of Microsoft Identity and Access Management solutions, being able to describe. So it's all about the fundamentals, being able to describe the capabilities of Microsoft Security Solutions, to describe the capabilities of compliance solutions. And so there's a heavy emphasis on tools like Azure, Microsoft 365 Defender. We talk within the class about a lot of different products to help you identify what would work best for you. Not necessarily how to get it configured, but it's a starting point for planning to understand where do you want to start looking in order to create a secure environment. And so when we talk about describing the concepts of security, compliance, and identity, when we talk about security, the idea of zero trust. We want people to have access to the resources they need, but we're not going to assume that just because you have a specific IP address or just because you have a specific user account name that you are indeed who you say you are. Zero trust, verify everything. We talk about the shared responsibility model in the cloud, understanding security of the cloud, security in the cloud, who's responsible for making sure that the level of protection that you need is actually has been established. Defense in depth, the use of encryption and hashing, and understanding that data can be at rest, data can be in use, data can be in transit, and maintaining security no matter what state your data is in. Now, when we move to the cloud, obviously, we are seeing data being stored, processed in different locations. Is it within the United States? Is it within Canada? Is it within, the European Union? Based on data sovereignty, based on where the data is at, we know there's going to be different types of regulatory compliance. We have HIPAA, but Canada doesn't have HIPAA. They've got Pipe DA. And so how do they compare with one another? If you store information on servers in another country, what they do, how they do, does it dovetail with what you need, or is there a gap? And what are you going to do to fill that gap? Identity concepts, making sure that we know who is gaining access. There are going to be federated services. We talk about being able to forward authentication requests to let a different domain service handle authentication to be able to maintain things like single sign-on. When we talk about the identity and access management solutions, being able to use tools like Azure Active Directory Services, being able to choose to use things like different types of authentication methods. We know there are things like what you know, what you have, what you are. So being able to use multi-factor authentication when required. If you need self-service password resets, being able to use the two-step authentication. If you're using Azure, if you're using Microsoft 365 to verify your identity, we'll send you a text, we'll make the phone call, send you an email. So that way, it's not just someone pretending to be you or guessing your username and password. And then with access management, fully identifying and authenticating someone before giving you initial access to an application. We can give you conditional access. There's the Azure AD roles to give you specific levels of access, and simplifying access using things like role-based access control. But one of the big things, identity protection and governance. Governance is how we manage our resources, and being able to go back through and audit and verify that people are only gaining access to the resources they need with the level of access they need. And when we talk about Azure security capabilities, being able to have network security groups, our ACLs, our filters, our rules, using a web application firewall to be able to see the requests coming into our internet information services, once again, our web services. But being able to avoid someone using scripts, or instead of just getting a web page, trying to post something, being able to use tools like the web application firewall to secure your networks. And Sentinel, being able to have your built-in security information and event management tools that can automate and orchestrate responses when it sees something that is not quite right. And back in the day, you had things like the Microsoft Security Baseline Analyzer, the MBSA, or Microsoft Baseline Security Analyzer, pardon me, where we saw, hey, here are the recommended things that you need on a computer. And being able to see where are we in regards to the recommendation for your baseline security versus what your baseline security should be. We have built in the security management in Azure to be able to look at the security baselines and tell you where are you in regards to meeting and achieving specific goals. And built in Microsoft 365 Defender, threat protection, to be able to look for, to monitor for various types of threats that we've defined. There's going to be a lot of different solutions out there for different areas that you're looking to manage. So the capabilities of Microsoft compliance solutions, the service trust portal and privacy principles, being able to take a look at once again, the services that you have enabled, compliance management in Microsoft Purview, being able to get an overall score. Where are you towards your, here is the goals, here's where you're at, here's the gap. Where are we towards meeting our requirements? But there are lots of different tools that are available to anyone. And knowing what tool you need, knowing the best tool for what your organization requires is half the battle. And so having SC 900 allows you to learn about all of the different platforms that exist, all of the different services that exist to help with your identity, with your security, with overall compliance for maintaining certain levels of protection. And so a certification exam like SC 900 is based off of a job task analysis. And JTA, they identify the task or competencies that are needed by individuals in different job roles. And so within the certification exam, the questions are developed based on, once again, competencies. And so what happens is, Microsoft analyzes the different roles and they create a blueprint for the certification exam. The objective domain provides foundation for exam validity by prioritizing skills. Now, I have written my fair share of certification questions over the years. And so based on the standards, based on the JTA, someone like myself will go back through, write questions based on the courseware. The describe in this case for this class. So we go through, we check for accuracy. We'll have the subject matter experts review, create the beta exam, and so that way they can start picking and choosing what would be the best questions. Now, it goes through several checks. Now, one of the things that you may discover is sometimes questions are worded kind of awkwardly. One of the things that we try to avoid as item writers is providing or writing a question and having the same verbiage in the answers. So sometimes when you see things worded kind of awkwardly, it's because they're trying to avoid queuing, is the formal term for that. The big thing when taking any of these certification exams, when I write a question for a certification exam, when I go ahead and write it, what I say is what I'm asking for. The big thing that I want to remind all of you, if you go to take certification exams, a lot of you have a lot of real world experience. And it's real easy for you as you read a question and look at the answers to but if. And when I say but if, what I'm saying is you're adding information into a question that doesn't exist. You're adding information into answers to make the answer make sense. When you're taking the fundamental exams and even any advanced certification exams, make sure you take a step back. And what they say is what they mean in the question. So that's something to watch for. I like adding that in as a little added bonus to help you with your test taking. Over a period of time, they will go back through and maintain, sustain. They will go back through and look at questions, look at the statistics regarding questions, and see whether or not things need to be improved. So role-based and specialty exams are reviewed every few months, fundamentals every 3 months, and once again, you might see small changes in the exams to meet the needs of a specific product. Here is a QR code, and I'll let our fabulous host talk about the QR code and the badge associated with it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ken. Yeah, before we get into any questions, if our audience has any, I wanted to let our audience know that we have an exclusive benefit for attending this webinar, a free achievement badge for Microsoft's SC900 course, which is the security, compliance and identity course we're talking about today. I went ahead and dropped it in the chat, or you could use the QR code on the screen to redeem your badge. If you are unable to redeem right now, or if you're watching a recording of this webinar, you can still gain access to our free badge with the link you'll be receiving in an email after the webinar. So be on the lookout for that. Awesome. I'll give our audience a little bit of time to scan that code or throw a last minute question in. And again, if they need any more info on this topic, can visit us at newhorizons.com. So without further ado, I will just kind of give our audience a second, and if we are all good to go in the next minute, I'll let us all go because I am so mindful of our time.
You've just got that smooth hosting voice. I'm telling you, man.
Do I?
I feel relaxed every time I hear you do
Stop
the
it.
intros.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you. All righty. Well, honestly, I think we are all good to go here. And I want to thank our audience again for joining us. And if they need a recording of this, to be on the lookout in their email for the recording after the webinar. Other than that, enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. And thanks so much for joining us. And thank you so much, Ken, again.
My pleasure.
All righty. Bye, everyone. Enjoy your week, and we will see you soon.
Have a great weekend. Take care.
Bye.